And welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Strife's Sanctum. I am your host, Citizen Strife, and I'd say things have been going pretty well for the last few weeks. I've been getting a few podcasts under my belt. At time of recording, I'm actually starting Persona 5 Royal on YouTube as well, so I'm in a very good mood as far as, like, YouTube, Twitch, and the like. But I said before that I'm trying to balance out doing video game reviews with anime reviews. I've been well invested in getting into watching old shows and new shows to get me interested for things to talk about. One of those was a rewatch of mine over the last couple of weeks. A fairly recent show by the name of The Rising of the Shield Hero. This came out a couple of years ago on Crunchyroll, and I'd say it was a really fun experience for me to rewatch it because I really enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I'm happy to find out that they're going to do a second season starting next year. They were going to get one this year, but the pandemic, of course, changed everything. But I find that Shield Hero was one of those things in the last couple of years that when it came out, I was wholly invested. And that doesn't happen all that often. Like, there are a lot of, like, you know, this is decent, this is good, this is fun. Much like Psycho-Pass, this is one of those things that was just like, I am into this. This is what I want. And to describe that, and to describe it for me, I have to reiterate, like I said with Psycho-Pass, I don't have a knowledge of the manga or where it's going. I don't have a knowledge of what other people know from, say, the production side of things or what's going on or what they're going to do with the franchise. All I can base off something is what's shown on a streaming service, Funimation, Verve, Crunchyroll, Netflix. This was on Verve, so Crunchyroll and Funimation. I watched it on Funimation again a couple of weeks ago, and I say it still holds up. And again, I watched dub versions to go over why I do that. Again, I'm legally blind. I can't really read subtitles very well, so if people are averse to dub versions, that's fine, but know that that's where my, like, knowledge base is and where I'm coming from a fan perspective. Now, talking about the show itself, the brand of show is what's known as an isekai. And for those who are not as familiar with, like, genres of anime, you have, I'd say the closest approximation, or the one everybody would know over the past 5 or 10 years, the one that really started the trend, was Sword Art Online. The basic idea is a person from the real world is, whether it's a video game, whether it's a new fantasy realm, whatever, is taken from their life and put in a different one. And the fact that they have so many of them, it's like, even on my queue on my anime list, it's like there's so many of these things, and it's like, what does this show do that can stand up against other ones, especially when I'm trying to talk about it as far as a review? Well, to me, what it really does is, unlike, say, something like Konosuba, which is very popular, but for a very comedic purpose, for a show like this, the other world, this guy is in another world and he takes advantage of it because he causes a bunch of chaos, and it's played for comedy and played for stupid, funny laughs, and it's still good. Shield Hero kind of splits the difference, but it also, when it starts off very serious, but not so serious that, not in the sense that the situation is our grave or this is just going to meant to be a serious show. It's more that what happens to the characters themselves turns them into this, like, brutal reality, like the seedier side of, you are taken to this new world and you're treated like a piece of shit from the off. And I will describe the intro bits when we get to them, but the main character is treated like absolute garbage from the moment he steps foot in this new realm. It's treated like a video game For all intents and purposes, it's a new world, so we'll go with that. If there are video game mechanics, which most of these things do, I will drop them in there when I need to, but realistically, just think this guy is taken from Japan to a new world and whatever. That's kind of the idea. But again, it's not without its goofy comedy, but the comedy itself is done by characters who are still grounded in that brutal struggle that they're dealing with. So the comedy, at least in most cases, doesn't detract from the gravity of the situation. I do feel it does to a point, but it's really sectioned off to maybe one or two specific things that I have issues with the show as a whole. As I stated before, the second season is slated for release sometime next year, so when I get around to that, I will get on that review as soon as freaking possible because I want to see more of this. As stated before, this guy, or a guy, in this instance, 4 characters, and we'll go over the characters themselves. Naofumi Iwatani, Moriyasu. Let me get the list actually, because this was supposed to be later in the set, but I will show you what it is. It's Naofumi Iwatani is the main character. We've got Motoyasu Kitamura, Ren Amaki, and one other one is Itsuki Kawasumi. Now, Naofumi Iwatani is the main character, and he's the one I will say is treated like complete garbage. The reason for that is the world that they inhabit, and the world that this first season revolves around is known as Melramark. So, general gist of it, these 4 guys are computer nerds or video game nerds or whatever. They're college students. They go to this kingdom and they're told, we've got this thing called the Wave of Catastrophe, and you're the only people that can save us because you're the 4 cardinal heroes of a spear, a bow and arrow, a sword, and the shield hero. But the shield hero is considered defensive and a weakling and a putz. So Naofumi, being the main character, is treated like absolute shit by kings, queens, you name it, people in the city. They've been brought up to believe that the shield hero is worthless, and everybody else in the party, being idiots, kind of take to their roles as we're the heroes. This is going to be fun. We're going to make some money, or we're going to have some fun in this adventure. So Naofumi is the one that's kind of like shunned to the side. And while this whole waves of catastrophe thing's going on, and they do a couple of these, I think at least 2, they might have a third later on in the series, but mostly it's relegated to like 2 specific episodes where this time of great catastrophe, these zombies are going after this crazy part of the world, and the heroes are shunted over there, and they gotta fight off the zombies and protect the, that sort of thing. The main thing is that Naofumi isn't an idiot, but he's treated like such. Because of a misunderstanding. And this is early enough in the show that I don't mind spoiling it, because it really sets the tone as to why everything makes sense. The king of the castle and one of his daughters, I will say one of his daughters, known as Malty Melramark, basically don't like the shield hero, so they conspire to say, how do we get around this? Oh, I know. I'll have him say he seduced me and then raped me and then stole my stuff. They didn't, but for all intents and purposes, this is the first time they're there. She buddies up to him, only to spring the trap on him, and the rest of the heroes are basically like, "You were a jerk. You seduced this poor woman. You're not worth our time. Get the fuck out of here!" And he is thrown out. He's got no money, no place. He is left with this shield on his arm and not much else. So what does he do with it? Well, he goes around killing stuff. So he fights for a little while, and then he gets some armor and weapons, but he gets a little bit of money. He basically just has to feed off whatever he can get from whatever shopkeepers will at least allow him to do whatever, or he'll, intimidate them because of his bad reputation. he happens upon a slave trader. So, yeah, fun times to be had. He happens upon a slave trader who's willing to give him something for cheap. He happens upon this girl known as Raftalia, who, think of like a girl with fox ears instead of the girl with cat ears kind of thing. And she was left there to die. They go over this later in the season, but for all intents and purposes, she's in a cage. She's sick. He takes her out because she's cheap, and he's like, whatever, I'll train her. What the fuck? Through machinations of his skill set as a shield hero, he's able to use potions and healing arts and all these other things and defensive skills that he learns, and he's actually able to train her to fight for him. So while he's doing the defensive Captain America bullshit, she's going to be the one stabbing dudes or learn to stab dudes. They go through a little bit and they have to figure out how to do that, but she finds him to be the only person that really cared for him. Again, this is later in the show. I don't really want to spoil everything. I'm just setting up the first 2 or 3 episodes mainly so it acts as a primer for this. Raftalia grows into this character that trusts him over everything else, even though everybody everybody else in the kingdom thinks he's worth a shit. Later on, he gets another character to his party known as Philo, who is basically, think of like a gigantic chocobo ostrich thing. And she has the mind of probably a 10-year-old, I would guess. So that's where some of the goofy comedy comes in, because she's played straight. And, they're kind of the main 2 or 3 party members. And the goofy comedy goes in there, but you have your more serious moments with Naofumi, Raftalia, the shield heroes, and the like, and you have to deal with the 3 heroes kind of every so often, every episode or something. He walks into the city, and then they find him. He's a piece of shit. There's other characters along the way, including the Queen of Melromark, who's in a different part of the world, and she doesn't show up until halfway through the series, but she's pretty much the only one that really thinks the shield hero is innocent and shit. And yeah, it comes back to, let's just say, without spoiling it, start more serious shit. So about episode 19 or 20, things really hit the fan, and stuff that happens to the shield hero comes back to bite everybody else in the ass because they were such dickheads to him. But going on from that, the aesthetics of the show are really nice. I do like the fact that even in the first season, you have this whole kingdom, but it's not the entire kingdom. You have other kingdoms that are part human / demi-human. The people like Raftalia with fox ears or cat ears or dog ears or whatever, the typical thing. So not every place is Melromark related. The first season is solely about this, but they do a good job of telling you that the entire world itself is at stake, and you're not just centered in this one area. So if they wanted to, they could stretch this to 2 seasons, 3 seasons, even more, depending on how popular the show ends up getting. Especially with the waves of catastrophe idea, they could make stronger monsters and stronger opponents for these heroes to face off against, and then of course there are parties and whatnot. The waves of catastrophe themselves are these timed mechanics, like every month or every 2 months, where a city's under siege by enemies. They have to hold out long enough that the enemies die off. So you've got to protect citizens and avoid getting killed yourself. Not the easiest thing to do. I love this weird, like, everything's all red and psychedelic looking sky and zombies and ghosts and shit everywhere. It's really good. I like the fact that they don't overdo the game mechanics, like your skill set and whatever is tied to, hey, I have an HP bar, but it's not like, I give you all this stuff. It's more like, think of the game mechanics as crutches to show you stuff that's happening on screen in a way that like a gamer would understand, but still feel that it's a fantasy world. So it's video game mechanics, but they don't overdo the video game-ness of it. That's the best way I can describe it. they have levels, HP bars, and stuff revolving around games, but you don't need that to appreciate what the show's going for. It's mostly to do with the monsters are there, you kill them, you level up, and you gain experience and whatever. It's fine. Let's see, other characters in the show. There are other things like religious conspiracies. Philo isn't the only like big ostrich character. They're called Philolials. That's the best term I could use for it. They're basically Final Fantasy's chocobos. For all intents and purposes, the difference is that Philo can turn into this like super fat looking one who's gigantic and kicks the shit out of everything. So you have these, 5 or 6 episodes setting up the 3 main characters, their beefs with the rest of the party. You do these, 5 or 10 other episodes with the political intrigue that's going around and messing everything up. What is happening during the show is the other shield heroes are trying to claim dominion over Mellermark in a small way because they're the heroes everybody loves. Turns out while they're going out and doing things, they're unwittingly being stupid and not thinking logically. Political coups of, dethrone a guy and then another guy takes their place, kill a thing but a disease ravages another place, give somebody something and then something else bad happens, and Naofumi and Raptalia gonna have to go there and think, what the fuck are you guys doing? So you end up cleaning messes. Most of the show is Naofumi using his powers of the shield to clean up other people's messes. So you have this sense that he's a good guy doing a good thing, but he's not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing it because everybody else is stupid and fucking up his job. And they don't realize that, but it comes back to bite them because Malty, the person who fake claimed that she was raped, is trying to do other things on the side. So other characters are getting involved and the political intrigue keeps ramping up. You have that church that's maybe not on the good side. Imagine that, a church that could or could not be evil or whatever, because we haven't had that sort of thing. So a lot of this stuff is ending up, like I said, cliche in a way, but you still have this building sense of this world is very gigantic. This world is very big, and there's a lot of different threats, whether it comes from religious sources, political sources, just monsters in general, or these waves of catastrophe, or sometimes even your own party members. So you have this big sprawling narrative that, again, they can only do so much in this first season, so they focus in a lot on that political intrigue, and that's what I think is one of the real big, strong points of the show. And I will get over that in a minute. What's not so strong is some of the character development. For all the development that Naofumi gets as the main character, and this belief that everybody is the shield hero, spear hero, sword hero, and bow hero, right? The other 3 characters don't get a lot of development. Ren and Itsuki for sure don't. They do some missions on the side, but you're never given if this were a more sprawling narrative, they would have had an episode devoted to Ren doing a thing and then Itsuki doing his own thing with his own party. They don't do that. They reference it as part of Naofumi going to a place and doing a thing. So Ren and Itsuki are just there. They're antagonists by proxy because Naofumi was treated like shit and everybody believes that they were treated like shit. So whatever. So I think that's a big issue. More to the point, the other hero, the spear hero, Motoyasu, is joined up at the hip with Malty, who, as we've said, is a conniving bitch. And excuse my language, I love throwing language, but anyway, they join up because Motoyasu doesn't know any better. He's an idiot, and she plays him like a fiddle and gets him to do whatever she wants. And unfortunately, that comes back to bite Naofumi every single episode or two, because they try to go to a place and Malty shows up with a royal decree that says, we're going to do this thing, or they're going to fight for rights of this thing, and like it's going to be a race, or it's going to be a fight, or it's going to be a duel for whatever purpose. Outside of one or two instances of this, it's usually played for laughs. And as much as I enjoyed the comedy of the show, taking away some of the like depressive and darker atmosphere, the fact that they do it so often at that Moriyasu is played like such a fucking nerd because he doesn't know any better, he's being played as a fool. It's hit or miss. When you have a show as strong as this that is very like stiff in its like brutality and groundedness, and you remember that these characters aren't there by choice and they're being driven to the mud, spending half an episode or two playing dumb comedy is a bit of a turnoff. I don't think it kills the show by any means, but it still feels like it's almost like watching Ruby and when they do that stuff, because they were a comedy show and then they turned super serious, and I get why some people wouldn't like that super serious side. This show was trying to be super serious at the start, but then kind of veered a little too often into comedy for my liking, but not enough to be a deal breaker, but enough that it annoyed me. The last thing I will say is the entire arc of the first season is this Melremark political intrigue. The king and the daughter versus the queen and the other daughter. And then the shield heroes are caught in the middle of it, and then the waves of catastrophe around it. But everything is in this same world. The towns, the people, all the other things going on tend to happen in Melremark for about 20, 21 episodes. And right when it looks like they've got a definitive, like, comeuppance or a good stopping point, a climax, they have like 2 or 3 episodes later where they just putz around and do other things. I think one of them is a defining wave of catastrophe with an earlier enemy and whatnot, but I still don't think it fits because you had this entire 20-episode arc of these characters in this specific area. If you're going to build a second area or you're going to travel to this new land, wait till the second season to do that. You don't need to do a 24 episode or 26 episode show just because that's the standard, because they do shows every week. I get it. 26 episodes is half a year, and then you do a rerun. It's a full year cycle, all that stuff. I get that. But not every show has to end on the same amount of episodes. And if you have only 20 episodes worth of material, then go with it. So I would say if you're going to watch it, go for that definitive political intrigue climax. And you'll know it when you see it, if you do decide to watch it, where the stopping point is. I don't think the other 3 episodes are going to kill you to watch them, but I don't think they're going to be as good a stopping point. I stopped the second watch through on that point because I knew this was what I wanted to see. Because, as I said before, the political intrigue, I'm not a huge political intrigue guy, but because there's so much stuff going on with the church being evil, the king and the daughter being absolute assholes to the shield hero, all this stuff leads to this main character who is defined by just hatred and regret, but he has to make do and be a good guy, even though he acts not really in a positive way. He's those like anti-hero people who act like complete assholes for profit, but are doing the right thing at the end of the day, mostly because everybody else doesn't know what they're doing. So this political intrigue is holding the show together, at least for this first season. And those first couple of episodes, if those don't grab you, I mean, nothing else will, because that is what the show is defined by, is that first like gigantic moment of Naofumi being blamed for something he was not committing, or everything in the world is committed by the shield hero, because they they know they can get away with it, or at least they think they can. Naofumi himself, Raftalia, and Philo, those three characters, and then one of the Melremark sisters on top of that to make a foursome at the end of about the midway point through the season. Those character interactions are really fun, really good, and I like almost all the characters in the show, whether they're antagonists or not. I mean, again, not all of them get equal screen time, but the interplay between Naofumi and Raftalia and Philo for comic relief, but also, the nice, the bastion of goodness that she is, as dumb as she is, bounce off each other well, that you're just like sucked into this whole, like, this is supposed to be a very dangerous, brutal journey, and yet they have this well-rounded approach to these characters that works so well. It's also good in action scenes. So for all the political intrigue and fun, when you get to those waves of catastrophe, or when you get to those Naofumi versus Moriyasu fight scenes, you get all this good action. For all the characters, they get the typical particle effects and crazy weapon effects that you get. I don't know so much about the weapon attacks that the other heroes get, but Naofumi gets, like, he can turn a potion into a really strong elixir to save people. He can, like, make a shield come out of midair and, like, everybody bounces on top of it, or they bounce in front of it and bounce off and can't do anything. They've got this, what's known as a shield prison. It's like this giant ball of spikes that just comes in and closes in on the enemy. And then some of the later stuff is just so OP as fuck. It's just fun. Just this gigantic, just weapons of mass destruction level of spell casting, and they do it really well. They make everything matter because everything looks and feels weighty in the show. So despite some weird comedy, despite some annoyances here and there about whether the characters should have been given more screen time, or could have been, if, like, Ren could have gotten an episode by himself to see what his party's doing, or Itsuki could have gotten an episode of his, or if it was all just, we'll focus on Naofumi and Raftalia because those are the two main characters, it's fine. To me, though, I think those first 3 to 5 episodes really set the tone for the show and give you that good balance of well-rounded characters in harsh environment who try to make the best of a bad situation despite everybody saying they are evil. But then you get enough levity and enough fun that it doesn't completely detract from the show. If it was a complete comedy or a complete downer, I don't think the show would be as effective as it is, and I'm really happy that they're going to do a second season, because who knows what they're going to do with it. I keep saying this over and over, but I like the fact that it's a deconstruction of a genre that, honestly, getting a bit old, and what more can you do with the person going to a new world and doing a new thing? You have some standouts, to be sure. I like to think that this is one of the better ones, and everybody's opinions can be different for sure. But I think if you're looking for something that knows what the genre is, but is willing to go in a slightly different direction and play cliches as more satire and deconstruction rather than just plain cliche, but you still want to have your laughs and still have your game mechanics and still have your serious side, this is a good balance. And it's something I'm not going to forget anytime soon. But that'll do it for me. Again, Shield Hero was something I watched a couple weeks ago. I've gotten some other shows in here and there. I've got some other games lined up as well. On YouTube, I've got my playthrough of Persona 5 going right now. That's going to take me forever, but I love it. Hopefully everybody else does as well. As far as the podcast goes, next week we have a guest, Tarvold's Quest, who has done this game in the past, but we're going to talk about it in our own way and have fun with it. It's going to be Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. I'm looking so forward to this. And to balance that out, because I've been doing a lot of RPGs lately, I changed it up with Catherine a little bit, but I went back to the Squaresoft stuff a little too often. So what I'm going to do is veer into Super Mario a bit, and not only do Super Mario RPG, but 2 weeks from today, or not from today, but from Super Mario RPG, 2 weeks after that one, I will try to line up a guest to talk about Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, 3, and World. So, in essence, the Super Mario All-Stars pack, the SNES remakes of all of those, and the Super Nintendo version of World. But that'll be a lot of Super Mario for the next month. On the anime side, I've got a show known as Mushi-shi coming up, and I have yet to decide what I'm going to do after Mushi-shi, but I've got some ideas. I'm trying to decide if I want to do any of the newer shows that I've been watching because I'm on a binge watch tear, or if I'm going to go and watch one of the more like well-known, super popular ones. I haven't decided what to do just yet, but if anybody's had a fun time listening to these podcasts or noticed anything about how they've gone, I think this is the 5th or 6th one so far. I feel a lot more comfortable. I think these episodes are getting stronger. They're getting better. I'm talking better. I'm hopefully not like skipping too much, but I'm also not spoiling too much in this format. Hopefully the good outweighs the bad and people are enjoying these. But again, as always, feel free to comment. If you're going to be like a troll about it, fine, whatever. I've had a couple trolls already. It's fine. But for people who are like wholly invested in this and want to see more, please tell me what else I can do to do better. Or even if you just want a show or a game for me to do right away rather than wait on it, let me know. I'm in this for the long haul because I'm really enjoying this. So I want this to be the best experience for everybody else. But if you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe, you know that junk. But I really do appreciate it. I want both facets of the YouTube thing to grow, the YouTube LPs and these podcasts, because I'm investing a lot of time and effort into these, and I really want people to enjoy every single bit of it. But I can't control what people want to do. So you guys are going to come to me, and if you want to watch, hopefully you're in for a good time. If not, then hopefully you find someone else who's also as good, who also spends as much time as they can making good content. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to have a good time. But that should do it for me. Thank you for watching this episode of the Strife Sanctum podcast on the Rising of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hero Season 1. And I'll see you guys next week. Citizen Strife, signing off.